Started. I'm so excited that so many of you are here with us for the workshop, which is a much more intimate way to learn more from Ben Schwartz. And that was really, Jody and I were talking about this, is probably like one of the best talks we've had over the last few years. And I just wanted to, I told you this before, but at the sort of nadir of the pandemic, when we were doing COVID Student Service Corps, we were trying to figure out how to thank all these hundreds of students who are doing all of this work in the medical school and public health. And what would we usually do? We would throw a pizza party, but you couldn't do that. So Ben actually did this amazing thing, and he held this evening drawing session with us. And it was pretty amazing, and most amazing at my family, who loves the New Yorker cartoon and thought it was so cool that we had a New Yorker cartoonist do this with us, and who have zero drawing talent. We're just so inspired by him and by being able to generate ideas and be a little sarcastic on paper. So I'm hoping that is something that you're going to engage us in today. So welcome back. I'm just going to remind you, at the end of this, we're going to move up to the faculty club. Everybody is welcome, both for lunch and for our amazing fellowship student fellow presentations. They are truly, truly, truly so reflective of the purpose of the Steve Miller Fellowship. And I hope that you can join us for food and presentation after. But right now, welcome back, Ben.
Thank you. It's great to be back. Actually, first up, one of the themes of what I was just talking about before was attention, right? Difference between attention and observation. So with that in mind, just curious, did anyone actually pay attention or see where my tie went after I took it off? Because seriously, I do not know where, it could not have gotten far, right? No one saw this? We say, and then from there, who knows? All right, well, we got a story out of it. Okay. Okay, welcome to the workshop part of today. So, you heard me talk about ideas, cartooning, creativity, but my hope now was that we could all get a little bit, some hands-on practice, all right? Meaning that, I want to do some creativity exercises. Some of them you can just do with your mind or with writing. There are some where, I'm going to invite you to draw. We have we have some paper and pens or pencils. If you have your own, that is a-okay too. What I want us to do now is to sort of test out this idea of becoming idea factories, right? Because we are, if you buy any of what I was selling in the last talk, we are going to, as a group, always going to be in need of new ideas. And we don't always have this experience of actually just sort of sitting down and just thinking up ideas. We're good when we run into a problem and we need to come up with an idea to solve it. You all are probably some of the best problem solvers around. But this idea of just sort of idly sitting around and thinking about, well, what new could we put out there in the world? That's a different kind of habit. So today we're going to get our creative juices flowing. We're going to sort of build up to it with some warm-ups, just a few warm-up creative exercises. Then, if you'll indulge me, we'll go through the exercise of trying to make our own gag cartoons, like make our own New Yorker style cartoons. And then once we're fully loosened up, I want to give you all a chance to apply that creativity to this issue of providing more humanism to healthcare, coming up with ideas, like the ones I presented to you before, but, good instead of bad. Yeah, does that sound okay to everyone? And when it comes to the drawing part of this, and actually every part of this, I may ask you to share work. I think it helps when people share what they've done, but I never will compel anyone to share their work. I do think drawing and being creative, writing, these are all private, personal things too. You need to sort of have the safety of knowing that whatever comes out of your head is your own until you want it to be seen by someone else. Um, but so, I will ask, I'll even maybe give the opportunity to share things anonymously, but I don't want anyone to ever feel pressured to share. Um, Not even guilt tripped. Okay. So what else in this long preamble? Um, I guess first I'll tell you also a secret about cartooning, because I know the idea of drawing something can be kind of nerve-wracking if you don't have much experience drawing. Uh, Secret of cartooning is you don't have to be a good artist to be a good cartoonist. Cartooning is not actually about drawing. Cartooning is very much about expressing ideas. As long as you can express your ideas clearly, that's okay. So you could have a horrible scribbled dog, but as long as it sort of has a snout or a tail, or as long as we can read it as a dog, that is a-okay. Um, Actually, a little bit of a fun fact, for the New Yorker, like in our contracts, they don't even use the word cartoon. They're actually called idea drawings. Um, but anyway, okay. So let's start with some warm-ups. Um, First warm-up I want to do is really just to get your drawing hand going and just to get your imagination started moving a little bit. We're going to play a game I play with toddlers. I play with octogenarians. It's fun for all ages. I call it the squiggle game, and it's very easy. What I want you to do is you can take out a piece of paper, and I want you to just draw a squiggle, okay? Such as this. You do not have to copy this squiggle. This is just a squiggle, but draw a squiggle of your own. All right? Don't give it too much thought. Just let your hand wander. All right. And now that you have this squiggle, the next part of the game is we're going to see something that's not there and we're going to put it there. In other words, what can we turn this squiggle into? So if you look at this one, what do you see? Anything jump out to you?
Sending.
I'm hearing answers, but I can't actually hear what you said. Did someone say a dog? Cat? A seal? Mountains, yeah.
Seal hooting.
A seal what?
Hooting.
Hooting, yeah. I could see that. Anything else? Try to turn your head. Could it be anything from a different angle? No. I don't know. I don't know exactly where I'd take this, but I could sort of see the bottom. If we turn this on the side, that could be like an open mouth. Maybe up above there could be the nose, maybe some hair coming out. There's no right answer to this, of course. It's just a squiggle. In this example, this person turned it into the mouth of some sort of like clam person. All right. So now that you have a squiggle of your own, though, let's take just a minute and look at your own and see where it takes you. You can turn your page all around. You could mess up. Doesn't really matter. All right, where did you go with that? Anyone want to share what they were able to turn a squiggle into? Maybe even hold it up? A balloon? All right, nice. What do you have back there?
Seven-legged octopus.
A septopus. All right. That's so there's inherently a story in there. What happened to that eighth leg? I want to know. Anyone else? You're learning something about yourself in this game. Anyone else want to share? Okay. Is that anyone you know? No? All right. Great. Now, you want to actually have some extra bit of fun. You quickly play another round. If you make another squiggle, but pass that off to the person next to you and see what they do with that squiggle. This is where you can decide, are you going to be kind to the person next to you, give them something really easy, or just create something insane? What are they ever going to do with this one? They take another second or two and then put your finishing touches on there. Hardest part of any piece of artwork is knowing when to stop, right? You can always add another line. I know we want these to be perfect, but all right. How did this one go? You share it with your seatmate? I'm hearing the laughter of surprise, delight. That's what you want to hear. Anyone want to share? Did you do another dog? Yeah. A dog rapping? Okay. I have a feeling you have a gift. I think I could give you any scribble and you could turn it. You could turn anything into a dog. I believe it. Anyone else want to share any interesting surprises? No? All right. Well, congrats. You've successfully completed the squiggle game. A great way to distract yourself with your classmates when you're trying not to pay attention during class. Easy to do at any time. But let's move on to the next level. So we warmed up our drawing hand. Now let's warm up our writing mind. I want to do our next exercise. We're going to play a little game that's familiar to you if you know the New Yorker. This is called the caption contest. All right. So this is something in the magazine they do every week. They'll have a cartoon at the end of the issue where they have stripped out the caption and they invite readers to come up with a caption for it, right? What's a funny line you could add here that brings some sort of resolution to this incongruous image? Anyone have any ideas?
Skip the Coke thing.
Glad you finally got closure. I heard skip the copay. You wanted to come home? Grave concert. Oh, that's a pun. Oh boy. Get a bonus point. Anything else? Nice, nice. I saw there's one back there. Look at this. You guys are on fire. All right. Well, so in what, 20 seconds, you guys just came up with 5 or 6 outstanding options here. You could see what the readers came up with for this one. These are the finalists. Any final thoughts? You've achieved closure. And perhaps we should reduce the dosage. That's kind of dark. I mean, the scenario is dark to begin with, but that's rough. Um, if you had to vote, which would you vote for? That's what happens later in the contest. So they have these finalists, and then the readers select the last one. Who would go for any final thoughts? No? You've achieved closure, and perhaps we should reduce the dosage. Okay. Got a dark mind here. The winner for this one was you've achieved closure. All right. So correct. I think you would have won the caption contest. Um, Fun fact about the caption contest. When I say fun, these are all subjective. But fun fact about the caption contest. These are actually cartoons that we cartoonists submit with a caption. The editor just decides, I don't like your caption. We're going to run it without it and let the readers choose. I actually do not remember what my original caption was for this one, but I think it might have been something like this, some play on typical therapist speak. Okay, but so that's the gist of it. So let's do a caption contest of our own. Here's a scene, and write down on a piece of paper a caption that you think could bring closure to this scene. And in doing this, this is also sort of it's not a particularly taxing, but it's an exercise in attention and observation. You have to look at what is going on, who's involved in this, where they are. In this case, they're drawing from a lot of the classic iconography of a cartoon. So it's obvious that this is a doctor from the white coat, but also the stethoscope in the pocket, the reflector mirror that doctors don't really wear anymore, but still make use of as a visual icon. You've got the cow patient, presumably the patient. What do we think? Give yourself another minute or so. Write down a caption, any caption that comes to mind, as many captions as you want. Wait for it. All right. What do you think? What do you got? Nice. Nice. What else? Nice. Anyone else? Oh, yes. I knew there'd be some sort of lactose intolerance gag in there. Moody could also sort of be a pun. Uh, anyone else? Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. You're not moving enough. Right there. Oh, yeah. Do you have one? You love those puns. I don't know. I don't know. Puns are they're pretty risky. Wait, sorry, say that again. So look at all the different places you're going with this. All right, let's see the answer for this one. The ringing in your ears. I think I can help. Again, you got it. Uh, yeah, no, I think you can make a career out of this. Um, so yeah, taking advantage of the bell on the cow's neck. One of the things about gag cartoons is because there's such little room for information, every little element is usually, somewhat meaningful. You don't have to make use of that bell to get the most out of this, but it is sort of staring at you right there, so it does become a nice focus for the caption. Um, all right, I'll try one other. How about this scenario? Try to come up in 30 seconds or so. Don't just try to come up with an idea. Try to come up with as many captions as you can for this one. So again, break down what you're seeing. We have a dog at a kind of fancy looking restaurant, looking at the menu, speaking to the waiter. Oh, this is a good hint for caption contests if you ever submit to the magazine. You'd be shocked at how many people don't pay attention to what character is actually speaking and send a caption for a character that's not talking. So in this one, it's the dog that's speaking. What would be going through a dog's mind while they're at a restaurant thinking of what to order? You can work with the people next to you too to brainstorm. We're all friends here. All right. Anyone want to share? You're going to go 3 for 3? Do you have a bone to chew with me? Okay. Going on the side.
How was the squirrel cooked?
How is the squirrel cooked? Yeah, that's something a dog would be wondering about. Yeah, love it. Love it. Water in your finest toilet. Anything else? All right. Here was Danny Shanahan's caption for this one. Is the homework fresh? I liked all of your suggestions. I think water in your finest toilet it would be a very strong caption for this too. That's a good alternative. All right. Let's see. We could save some for later if we have extra time, but I think we'll move on quickly. Okay, next game we're going to play is a reverse caption contest. So now we're going to start moving towards thinking a little bit more visually. For this, as the name implies, we're going to switch it up. I'm going to give you a caption and I'm going to ask you to come up with the scenario that this is being applied to. So in this exercise, I do invite you to try to draw up the scene that you think the caption can go to, but if you don't feel like you can really draw it, just try to write down what scenarios could be happening, what situation could be happening, put it in words that these captions could apply to. All right. So first up, no wonder we could get tickets. We'll take a minute for this. Again, chit chat with your neighbor, brainstorm. It's all good. No wonder we could get tickets. Where did they get tickets to? Why are they easy to get? Who are the we? All different things to play with here. All right. No wonder we could get tickets. What is going on that somebody, something, someone is saying, no wonder we could get tickets? Who came up with a scenario, a scene? Hologram concert. Who's playing at the concert? Beatles. Oh, see, it's got to be someone cheesy, someone you don't really want to see, right? There's good potential in that, and taking sort of the cool, whatever trendiness of a hologram concert and then making it like, I don't know, what's like a, Creed or something, something no one would want to see. No offense if you're like Creed fans or anything. But yeah, I love that. That's the right track. Who else? Yeah, okay. Okay, there you go. That's painful and true. Like a good cartoon, it resonates with anyone unfortunate enough to be a fan of the Jets. I like that. Yeah. No dogs. Okay. Oh, nice. Anyone else? Yeah. So funny you should say that. Here's one of the answers to this. Sort of similar, not exactly the same, but similar. You came to see lions and instead you get kitty cats. Although I think this would probably actually be very entertaining. I would like to get tickets to that. Here's another play on this. No wonder we could get tickets. This is not the most exciting merry-go-round. And you could see that's sort of a common theme in terms of finding the humor. You take you put the opposites together, something exciting and something boring, smush them together. Here's one last one. No wonder we could get tickets. All right. Let's see. You want to try one more? That was a not overwhelming yes, but why not? Uh, this is a good all-purpose caption. Are we there yet? A lot of room to work with this. Are we there yet? Just a couple of words, but what can you play with? Who are the we? Where is there? How long is yet? Give yourself a minute. That last one, how many of you actually tried to draw out the scenario that you came up with? Oh, it's tough, right? You tried it? How did it go? Yeah. You gotta fake that quickly. Yeah. Are we there yet? Okay. Are we there yet? What is going on in this scene? Oh, yeah. That's been a long trip. Are we there yet? That's great. Yep. Are we there yet? Yeah, they will never be there. It is too far. I like that. You know, you're speaking to the right crowd. Yeah, that's great. This over there. That's great. Yeah, but this is perfect. Write what you know, right? Right. You can come up with ideas that, maybe wouldn't resonate with everyone out there in the wider world, but that is a-okay because that's not what you're here to do. So absolutely tap into your area of expertise. Wait, are we getting questions on the Zoom? Is that a thing? Am I supposed to be looking at that? I don't know how to do that. All right. Okay, are we there yet? Let me show you what David Cypress wrote for this. I think this is a great gag. Are we there yet on the road to enlightenment? But yes, I love your suggestions, especially love the ones that are really true to your experiences. Okay, so we have now warmed up our drawing arm. We've practiced our writing. We've practiced imagining some scenarios. I think we are ready to go to our next event. Let me just flip through some extra cartoons. And now for our next part of this, now that we're warmed up, we are going to actually try to make some gag cartoons for ourselves, the whole thing. Why are we doing this? Well, in part because we still need to, people still need to do it. Tried to get the computer to do it for me, but this is what AI did. It's close, but it's not quite there. Isn't it scary to live at a time when this is a thing? But besides being, just a pleasant diversion, I do think that there is something that anyone can take from going through this exercise of trying to make a gag cartoon. For one, I think it tests us. It's challenging in that it requires a lot of creative planning and discipline because it is a very unforgiving format. Again, it just has the one image and a single caption. That caption may be a couple of sentences at most, but it's really not a lot. And in a cartoon, even in a gag cartoon, you're really trying to tell a whole story in that space, right? Like, here's one of my all-time favorite cartoons. Okay. So there's an entire scene here, right? An entire story. There's characters and setting and background and relationship, setup and punchline. And it's all just established here in this one image and a very brief caption, right? That's a beautiful thing, but that's a hard thing to pull off. You know, even for a story as simple as a joke, it's much more natural to tell that in at least like 2 or 3 panels. That's the way a lot of like newspaper strips are structured, you know, one panel for the setup, one for a breather, final panel for the punchline. To compress them all into one, you really have to be disciplined and you really have to think through what you're putting down on paper, right? It requires understanding the variables you have to play with. In this case, again, the image and the caption. So these are a couple of cartoons I showed in the talk, right? So the one on the left, if you look at it, it helps me empathize. So that caption, it helps me empathize. If you remove the image, that's not a particularly, you know, funny, humorous statement. That's a very normal thing someone might say. It helps me empathize. So essentially in this one, the artist Paul Noth is using the caption as the straight man, as the setup. And then the punchline is all in the visual, right? If you remove the caption from that image, it's still a funny image, right? Because it's silly. What's going on here? You see the opposite in the other cartoon by Joe Dater. If we just remove the caption there, there's nothing particularly funny about this scene. This could be any normal scene of a doctor speaking to a patient. In this case, the image is the straight man, the setup, and the caption is the punchline fully, right? All the joke is in that line, right? Doesn't always have to be weighted like that, but that's a good way to balance it. A lot of cartoons, though, the weight is kind of equally distributed. This one, you remove the caption. It's a very silly cartoon, but you know, there's no sort of sense to it. But if you remove the image and just read the caption, it's a silly caption, right? Still doesn't quite make sense. It's only when you see the two together, though, that they become more than the sum of their parts. And they work to tell this little story that hopefully gets a little laugh or giggle out of you. So that's the that's the challenge of constraint with cartoons. The other challenge in making a gag cartoon is how unconstrained they are, how open they are. Because while the format is unforgiving, the subject matter, that could be anything, right? There's no topic that you have to use for a gag cartoon. They certainly don't assign us as cartoonists a topic. You can cover anything. These are not, you know, people sometimes mix up gag cartoons and editorial cartoons. They're not the same. You have to cover politics, current events. You can do a cartoon about anything. Do a cartoon about music. You can do a cartoon about, you know, world events, but not directly, maybe a little more indirect. You can do a cartoon about any silly thing that comes to mind. I always like this one. So that's great to have that freedom, but it's also actually very scary too, because it's very hard to start when you don't have a starting point, right? So how do we get to a starting point? I kind of went through my process a little bit in the talk, right? I talked about how I generate my leads, just sort of being open to any little thing that catches my cartoonist brain and using those as my starting points. One of my friends and colleagues, Drew Dernovich, who's a fantastic cartoonist, he once took the kind of thing that, you know, I spoke out for you in words during the talk. He once sort of visualized his process, which I thought was fascinating. You know, where basically he takes his starting point, in this case, you know, just a sort of typical scenario trope boardroom meeting, and mapped out the kind of game of associations and questions, you know, the experimentations that you run. So you can see here, yeah, you could read this, right? You know, just asking himself questions. Okay, if this is a boardroom meeting, who's in the meeting? Why are they there? When is this happening? Is it, that could be at nighttime or daytime, or one could be, in a different era. What would a medieval times board meeting look like? Who would be there? What's in there? A table. What if you replace the table with something else? The why are they there? Is this a normal meeting? Or is this, something totally abnormal that we're applying the kind of mundane meeting setting to? You can go through any of these paths, and the idea is you just go far enough and keep going, and you will eventually find something where there's some interesting connection, something that calls out to you that says, oh, this is different, this is interesting, this tickles me, I want to turn this into an idea, that there's something sort of contained here. And this game, these associations, they could take you very, very far away from your starting point, or sometimes you can get really close, just from your initial idea, your initial lead, you can find your answer pretty soon after. I'll give you a couple of examples from some of my cartoons. So you guys know this big whale at the Museum of Natural History? I've always loved this whale. As a kid, it was always the highlight, coming to the museum and looking at the big blue whale. And so that just stuck out to me as something like, it was almost a little challenge for myself. I want to do a cartoon with that whale, but what? Like, what is the actual joke? What is the gag here? And I did that kind of mapping, not on paper, just in my mind, that we showed with Drew. And actually for this one, I got to an answer that was not very far off from where I started, just sort of thinking, okay, this is a big, big whale. What's inside of it? And from there came to the idea of it as a piñata. And yeah, that worked. That was whole. You can also see here just an example of the kind of manipulation and storytelling we do as a cartoonist, right? If you think about it, he could only be hitting that piñata if he was standing on the pile of candy that could only have come out after he hit it. But we're not going to ask too many questions about that. That's okay. Here's another whale cartoon, actually. Oh, hey, didn't recognize you out of context. But this is actually an example of a less direct path, because this sort of silly, absurd cartoon, this one actually started from a fairly grounded place. This started from my own reflections, thinking back on all the times as a kid being out, out around town with my father, and him bumping into patients out in the real world and having that experience of, they don't recognize the doctor out of context, and he didn't recognize the patient out of context. But then, I go through a game of, okay, well, what other scenarios could that apply to? Where would that be similarly funny? And I came back to Moby Dick and Ahab. Another little bit of stories behind the cartoons. This was another example. I remember this was not long after I got married, and still sort of in the honeymoon phase, and we were both off work, wandering around the Met. And I remember looking at the sarcophaguses, whatever. And for some reason, even though I'd seen these a whole bunch of times, it struck me in the moment that there's something kind of funny about being buried in a box that is shaped like you. Like you're in a U-shaped coffin. I don't know why, but I knew there was something there. I had a hunch, I had an instinct, but I couldn't quite get to anything with this until it led me farther into making other connections of like other U-shaped containers. And that's actually how I eventually got to this cartoon, combining the U in a U-shaped thing, but also with the theme of morbidity and death. So just put it together through that connection. So it's a kind of wild, loose process. There are some things that we can do to help contain this process. I used the language in the talk of kind of running some experiments, thinking through variables and running through experiments. I like to try that approach. I like to do some common experiments too when I don't have like a clear path. So some things are always some reliable things are always, going literal with something. So, the poetry of John Donne, no man is an island. Okay, well, what if a man is an island? Exaggeration is always a thing that works well in a cartoon and humor. This is like a conceptual exaggeration, but also visual exaggeration, of course, always plays well. And then inversion. I hate when you check your messages at the table. So, here, sort of switching it up, taking a high-tech issue and switching it with a very low-tech issue. It's a reliable source of comedy. But probably the most powerful experiment you can run, and another big reason why I think this is actually a useful exercise for people to go through, is the empathy experiment. Take something, anything, could be a person, could be an animal, could be a thing, and just start thinking, what is their life like? What are they thinking, right? Everyone's going around smashing these lantern bombs. Okay, so there's got to be something we can do with that, but what is it like for them? What are they thinking about? What is going on in their world? Thinking through from their perspective got me to this cartoon. But then here's another one. Piñatas, such fun, joyful, playful things, right? We love piñatas. We cheer with the piñatas. What are we doing to a piñata? We're beating the crap out of this thing, right? So for us, they're a fun game. For a piñata, a party is a crime scene. It's a horrible thing. So I thought, what if I was a piñata? I would want some justice. I would want to get people back. And so that led to this cartoon. And again, you see how you have to be sort of careful about how many details you add in, just enough to sort of get the point across, make it sure it's clear that it's piñata, put the crutch and the bandage to really emphasize that it's been hurt. Put the party hats on the kids to make it absolutely certain that you know what the connection is. Altogether, that forms a good gag. Skip through these. These are a little bit more just on the refinement process, if you're interested. So here's one where, the basic idea, the basic gag is there. Their cigarette breaks are majestic, but it wasn't quite working. And one of the reasons was cigarettes, I think, are, people just, some people just don't even like thinking about cigarettes anymore. It seems too distasteful. And the other thing is whales, at least in my, I didn't capture the whales well enough. They're a little bit too shapeless. And for a gag cartoon to work, it has to be instantaneously recognizable. Even like a half second to process it, you've lost your audience, right? So I reworked this and came up with the same basic joke, but slightly different scenario, a much more recognizable bald eagle, made it a little sillier too. But there you go. Here's another refinement process. So you guys know Schrodinger's cat, that whole thing. Don't make me try to explain what it is. But the gist of it is somehow, because of quantum physics, there's a scenario where a cat is simultaneously alive or dead. I knew that there was something funny about this, and I knew it was on just the right side of esoteric, but known that it could be a good joke for an audience, that they would feel good if they got it, but it wouldn't be too obscure that it would be off limits. But I had a Dickens of a time figuring out how to actually execute this joke. And so, I first tried this very early in my cartooning career, still when I was getting, weekly rejections. And I think this was the first one I tried. Paradox, schmaradox, if you don't make some air holes soon, this cat is definitely dead. This is not a good cartoon for many reasons. But, for one, it's not clear what's going on? You know, I tried to draw one of the characters as Dr. Schrodinger, except the thing is he's not, you know, he's not Einstein. We don't have an instant recognition of him just from the visual. It's also just not clearly set up in the caption. So then I did another pass at it where now I'm overcompensating. You know, I don't care what quantum physics says, Schrodinger. If you don't poke some air holes in here, that cat's definitely dead. I'm getting the idea across more, but because I'm really doing too much to tell you, right? It's too slow, it's too clunky. So I had to sort of rest on this one for a while, and eventually it came back to it and was able to see it later with clearer eyes and became this much stronger, simpler cartoon. So, enough of me talking at you. So let's actually now try to make our own gag cartoon. All right. And if you want, maybe we could start almost as like a group brainstorm. I was thinking this is a pediatrics event. Maybe we could try to think of pediatrics as our starting point. And then, you know, and you can write this down on your paper, and let's just sort of try to kind of map this a little bit. What are some questions, directions, rabbit holes we can go down with pediatrics, you know? Who's involved in a pediatric visit? And there's, you know, doctors, there's the patients, there's the family members. Okay. What are some other questions that we could ask ourselves? Where is this happening? Is this at a doctor's office? Is it at the hospital? Is it at an unusual setting? You know, what would be sort of the flip side? Maybe instead of the doctor seeing the kid at the doctor's office, maybe the doctor's in the kid's home turf at school or something. You know, I welcome you to sort of join in, toss up questions. What are some of the variables we can play with if we're thinking about pediatrics, children's health?
Kids going crazy in the waiting room or in the exam room.
Kids going, yeah, kids being impatient. Why are they impatient? What kind of damage could they be causing? Yeah. Sorry, could you say that louder? Healthy or sick? Yeah. Why is this kid at the doctor's to begin with? What do they have? Do they have sort of a typical condition that you might expect to see in a pediatrics office? Maybe they have something very unconventional. Maybe that's where the joke is, the reason they're coming. You want it? I 100% that resonates with me. That's a great direction to keep exploring, right? Because that's both funny and authentic. What's the medicine? Yeah. Yeah. What's a medicine that a kid might want to take? Or yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's not that scary, or it won't hurt, I promise.
Yeah, that's a gold mine, flipping it up. If you have the kid as the doctor, what would their perspective be? What would be their chief concern if the kid was a doctor? Would they be approaching things the same way that you would? No, they might have different priorities. Do they want to see like your candy levels are raised a lot higher? You know, cheesy things like that. Yeah.
Next time we're going to throw a bigger tantrum, but that's something that
Yeah, there you go. Now we're sort of making connections too. This idea of the tantrum, which is an authentic behavior, but being rewarded. The idea that it's always fun when you know, elevate the person that usually is sort of suffering in these scenarios, right? The kid in real life is often powerless when they're at the doctor, right? Giving them a little bit of power in this cartoon is fun and playful, and showing that their chaos is actually part of their plan. That's a great start for a cartoon. Yeah.
But he, the parents just a lawyer and then they would imagine first because they've got to the child.
Sorry, what was the two? So that's a great example of, again, like this sort of inside for the narrow audience of pediatric medical folks who are interested in gag cartoons. That's gold, right? That's what maybe a pediatric gastroenterologist would use to help keep their kid wrangled while they're at Disneyland. I don't know what that was. All right. Yeah, back there. I love that. I've actually been trying to get an object permanence gag in the New Yorker for a while. That's a great angle on it. What, sorry? So it's you can tell me the caption again, but the scenario is that the kid has coverings on their ear or eyes and they can't see their baby brother in the room. And what was the caption? My object permanence gag that I have not fully been able to execute yet is a baby magician saying, you know, for my next trick, I will make this thing disappear just by moving it slightly out of my field of vision. All right, these are gold. So, you know, a lot of these are the starts to something that could be worked up to a full idea. Some of these are fully formed already. You know, well, we should move on soon to the next thing, but I want to give you just another minute to work together and just try to write down any more ideas that can come from this kind of brainstorming. And remember, you're not going to any defined destination other than the joke here, right? So you could start in pediatrics and end up somewhere completely different. And that's okay. That's actually part of this, is learning to be okay with moving far off, going on tangents. That's a different kind of thinking than you may be used to, where you're constantly trying to refocus yourself. Here, it really is about letting your imagination wander and play. You know, already we're mostly thinking in terms of a traditional doctor-patient visit, but, you know, these don't have to be humans. You know, the patient, the doctor, the whole scenario. These could be animals. These could be objects. This could happen in a different time. This could happen in a different world. You know, it could be an alien pediatric situation. You know, I don't, you know, this is sort of a hacky gag, but something that comes, you know, just jumps out to me is, you know, what's something that we know is really, really old? What, like turtles live a long time, right? Or like what's something like that, where, you know, the gag is basically it's pediatrics, but the pediatric patient is still, you know, 70 years old or something. That kind of stuff, that's sort of an easy, solid go-to. It's not necessarily the best joke, but it's a coherent joke. There you go. And that's the other element of empathy too, when it comes to making a gag cartoon. So there's a lot of empathy involved in coming up with the idea, in terms of thinking through from other perspectives, as well as doing a lot of introspection, thinking through your own perspective, what's relevant to you. But then the execution of them requires a lot of empathy too, because now you're trying to do something that another person, that your audience is going to process. And so you really have to put yourself in their shoes and think, okay, this thing that is funny to me, is that going to be funny to them? Do they know what I'm talking about? Do they have, the similar frame of reference? If they don't know, have I given them all the things that they need to understand it? Is there anything that I'm missing here? Is there anything where they might have a different relationship to this topic, this material than what I do? You really just have to think through. You're never going to be able to fully know or predict how people will respond to your work, but you still have to go through that exercise of putting yourself in their shoes to try to anticipate it and try to then sort of refine your idea, very personal to you, to something that can also be enjoyed by others. All right. Anyone want to add any more ideas from this? Yeah.
One idea that we were playing with this idea, to me, art sounds like a medium, right? And so this idea of being like unheard in the larger atmosphere, and yet sounds the emerging. And we were trying to like figure out something to work with that. But to your point, it's like art bring the breath like this music therapist is very different than maybe other audiences. So we were like trying to convey that. How do we use art to try to get that message across? And we were like, this idea of being unheard in space, we were like, I don't know, it's hard to try to think about visual imagery that would be able to sort of convey that, and we were trying to think about like even alarms and things like that in the room are also things that we're combating. We're thinking about like, integrating so that we can try to create space for healing and recovery. And with that, we were like, okay, what if the machines were maybe like coming at us and all these things are coming at us? And I was like, yeah, that's great. Because now it shows like the hierarchical like power dynamics. But it's hard to really get something going around that, especially with our brains. It's very different than let's just say the audience here.
Yeah, I mean, you perfectly nailed the challenges there, and yet you see that you've already made progress with it, because within this challenge that feels very unique to what you're dealing with and what you're doing, there is at the core of it something that I think we can all relate to in different ways, maybe than the way you're talking about it, but feeling unheard, right? Just in general, that's the core that you hang on to. And that's the thing that you can translate across any scenario into different situations. So, if you really wanted to use this cartoon to educate people on certain challenges of, dealing, being in that, music creative therapy world, that's very, very difficult. And that might have to not unfold in this format, right? Or be more like, what we're talking about, where I'm sure you could come up with something that would go over like gangbusters to your group of people that already know all these things, where you have more assumed knowledge. But yeah, no, you're thinking through all the right issues. And that's the other thing too. And back to the idea in the talk of like going through a lot of dead ends, rejected ideas. Sometimes you don't get anywhere. There's not always a solution. And that's when you go look at it from a new angle, find a different way. Yeah. All right. So, okay. Let's then, so now you're, trained expert cartoonist. You know not as much about this stuff as I do. You are welcome to submit to the New Yorker anytime. But let's now, with the end of our time, put our creative juices towards where it really matters the most. Put it towards coming up with new ideas for medical humanism, right? So I want you to kind of go through this process and the process I talked about in the talk of thinking about your leads, the things that are relevant to you. This is a very selfish thing now. Think about your own interactions with the system. Each of you have a day-to-day relationship with healthcare, one way or the other. And let's start using that to try to generate some new ideas on ways we could improve it. And you could go silly like I did. You can go serious. This is a sort of a time for playfulness in your thinking, but in terms of the execution, be bold, change the system. Maybe we'll come out, someone will come up with something here that will actually meaningfully change the future here. Why not? Just as an aside, I realized when I was putting together all this stuff, I actually went through a version of this when I was just starting out at the New Yorker. My editor asked me there was like a technology or innovations issue, and he asked a bunch of cartoonists come up with new ideas for certain fields, and he asked me to come up with new ones for medicine. So I found this old cartoon, The Doctors of Tomorrow. I think there's some stuff here. So it's a sleeveless white coat, because that's more sanitary. You also get to show off your guns. Hand warmer mittens so that, you don't have the cold hand touching the patient. Sterile ties, that's another big source of infection spread. That's where my tie is, right. I like the idea of bringing back the head mirror as a screen that can entertain patients while you're talking to them. But this is basically where I turn it over to you. I suggest you start by just taking a minute to write down the things that come to mind when you think about your day-to-day in healthcare. Some of the words that come to mind, the challenges, the stresses, and just take a moment to write those down, and then take a second pass, take a minute, and just start thinking and brainstorming and going through those sort of free associations and seeing where it can take you. If your guide in this activity is, how can we inject more humanism into this? How can we provide more opportunities to let ourselves have that little moment of reflection to, get out of that doctor vision for just a second? And try to come up with as many as possible. Like I said, we're going to need a lot of ideas. In fact, I think one of the key things is that we need ideas. We don't, we've gone so far in terms of raising the standards of humanism in healthcare. We have an openness now, I think, to new ideas. What we still don't have necessarily is the structure to take those ideas and, operationalize them in the way that we should. We're still very much reliant on passionate individuals. And we have a lot of passionate individuals, which is why we're going to come up with some great ideas. But for right now, it's going to take, I think, still a little bit more of generational change until we have, people basically like the students in the room coming into leadership positions and really shifting priorities at an institutional level to more fully invest in these things. But for right now, the key is to just become relentless idea factories, to have so many ideas that they can't ignore you, that someone will pick up on one of your ideas and help you turn it into reality just so you stop asking them for help with these ideas, right? Just keep generating new ideas. Never stop. If you need, if you're having trouble sort of coming up with some prompts for yourself for this one, feel free to piggyback off of one of my stupid ideas and see if you can find something smarter, because I am certain you can, right? The waiting room. What would you do to improve the waiting room? I mentioned the prize cabinet for grown-ups. Is there something to this idea of maybe not a prize cabinet, but how can we incentivize people, make people feel rewarded in some way, recognized for the sort of emotional burden and often physical burden of coming in for their visit? What can we do to add some kindness there? I made the joke about the Healthcare Hall of Fame, right? Having a retirement ceremony for your white coat. So that just came from thinking through that we have a ton of milestones early on in the career, right? You have the white coat ceremony, you have a moving up ceremony, you graduate residency, you graduate fellowship. But after that, you're kind of out there in your career and you'll do a lot of great things, you'll get recognition. But those kind of system-wide milestones are fewer and far between, but they really do have a function. A milestone is a great place to trigger your reflection and thinking of where you came from. So, if you don't like the Hall of Fame, what are some more later career milestones we could add in, right? The white coat ceremony itself was a made-up milestone, right? It wasn't a thing that had been done for hundreds of years. It was something that people realized is a special thing. It allows for more reflection and brings more attention to the idea of this new role you're taking on. So how can, so we can totally fabricate, make up new milestones like that. What would they be? It could be anything. I leave it up to you to figure it out. And I encourage you also, talk to your neighbors, talk it through, see what their pain points are. Give you 5 minutes, to really focus on this, because this is worth focusing on. But you also realize how kind of rare this is too. Again, we get creative a lot. In healthcare, you're always being creative. You're always creatively solving problems, but you don't often have this opportunity where you're more this sort of active passive mix, where you're just putting time away to think about things that you could solve, but that are not immediately in front of you. I think there's like 39 comments on the Zoom. Am I supposed to be? I can't see them. I don't want anyone to feel neglected. If you're watching this on Zoom, I love you. Oh my gosh, this is a whole batch of cartoons. Astronomy too. Surgeon stating beauty is only skin deep. Once again, slow moving turtle wearing an epic t-shirt. Oh man, that again, gag cartooning just for healthcare providers. These are gold. Translator used as visit with a dolphin. Oh, I have a gag where it's a dolphin at a medical exam doing the eye chart, and it's just turtle that failed toilet training, bringing a scribe to a marriage counselor. That's good. NYPNCU arm wrestling. All right, these are very institution specific. I'll hold off on some of these. Doctor trying to close a door being pushed open by RSV, influenza, and COVID. That's more of an editorial cartoon, but that's a great editorial cartoon. Using a stethoscope as suspenders. Point of care sonogram examining someone's wallet. That's perfect, right? That's a great commentary on the healthcare system. iPod version of the Whitman Classic. Waiting room drawn to represent purgatory, definitely. Vampire hired as phlebotomist. That would be a good job for a vampire. Or actually, would it be a bad job? Would they get fired, right? Because would they always be trying to drink the blood? You would not last very long as a vampire phlebotomist. See, those are the kinds of stupid questions you can explore and spend a lot of time going through when you're cartooning. So who is this? Is Dr. Librito? Dr. Librito, you could be a gag cartoonist if you want to, if you want to put the stethoscope down. I think you got a lot of talent here. This is excellent. Give your phone back. All right. Have you changed the world? Anyone want to share their big ideas or small ideas for adding humanism to the world of healthcare? They can't be any dumber than what I did. So feel free. Yes, back there. I think that I think that's a fantastic idea. I mean, anytime you get to really take on another person's role, position, perspective, that's at the heart of humanism, right? What is it about our humanity that connects us is the fact that we're all the same, but we're each individual, we're each different. So the more that you get to experience what someone else experiences, the more you bring us all together. I love that. Actually, I had a role reversal idea I actually did fill up this whole deck with dumb ideas. I only subjected you to a small fraction of them. One of them is slightly different, but a role reversal when it came to exams. Make the attendings take the exams every once in a while, just so actually you could really see their clinical thinking live demonstrated, and see them put on the spot in the same way that you as the student get it put on the spot. I think that could be helpful. What else?
The doctor and patient are talking, they each have mics and there's a moderator that you, the doctor, can try to interrupt.
I love that. I love that. I had one, this is a little too much of a like human rights violation to be a pro-humanistic effort, but I had one where like the patient could press a button to shock the doctor a little bit anytime they use too much jargon or anything. But I like that's a much more humane way to get at something sort of similar. I love it. What next? Yeah.
Something like allow students to make playlists for exams and something like that would be nervous, but also maybe very for jobs.
That's a no-brainer. Like that's great. I mean, there should be more opportunity for people to make playlists, spread music around, have more ambient music in the hospital, have curated playlists from patients, from providers, whatever, instead of just sort of the random elevator music that might play in the background. That's the way you could add more of personal touch. Yeah.
Moments that matter, like once a day, the interaction with patient and staff, that meant something. They just write it down every single day. Remind you that even on things, 10 things may not be pleasant. There's one thing that meant something to you, and by the time you are ready to retire, you'll have a body.
That's a beautiful thought, right? And also the beauty of that is that's the type of idea we could just do, right? I mean, there's a little bit of budget. You got to buy some notebooks, but you know, it's not one of these things that should have to go through committees and subcommittees and get approval. Like just hand notebooks out at that ceremony and you've made a change. And that's a great thing. Yeah.
And I feel like from the patient perspective, like seeing 5 people walking, like making freaking out, gloves, mask, it almost makes them feel like they're infected or infectious or something. So like somehow, I'm not really sure how, but change like what he looks like, or make it invisible, or something clear, or something, I don't know, have different styles or designs on it that makes it exciting.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is something where, you know, this is where things will take off more once we get higher level investing in these types of issues, because absolutely there should be, you know, graphic designers, fashion designers involved in our sphere that are working on that kind of thing. It's actually an interesting article in the Times this week, sort of going through some of the evolution of the patient gown. And there have been some efforts. There's apparently, I didn't know this, in the last 10 years at the Cleveland Clinic, Diane, what's her name, von Furstenberg designed a patient gown. But we need more of that. You know, Columbia must have a connection at the wider university to some design students, fashion students who could help us with this project. These are the things that are going to take, again, willing people, passionate people, people who are going to do the, frankly, unpaid labor, because there is not yet enough support for this. But these are great ideas, and these ideas have true potential to change things. All right, I think our time is just about up. If there's anything else, let me know. But otherwise, thank you so much for indulging me in this ridiculousness.
So thank you all so much. That was, I feel like the day just keeps getting better and better. So thank you so much. And it's going to get even better because we're going to listen to our wonderful students' presentations up at the faculty club on the 4th floor. So everybody can just take your time, use the restroom, go up. The food will be available when you're up there, and we'll start promptly at 12 with our presentation so we can really listen to all of their wonderful work. Another huge round of applause for Ben. Very remarkable. And thank you, Steve Librito. I captured all of your ideas, and I'll send them back to so that you two can collaborate in some way. Thank you again.